Mahudi. Our new chapter book for Term 2 is Possums to You by a Kiwi author called Vince Ford. I hope you enjoy this book. Chapter 1, Playing Possum. Vinny picked up the last of the soggy chips from the paper in the back of the van. "Now I'm broke," he said. "Me too," said Tammy. Her mum was driving us all back from the movies. "Those takeaways are the last I'm going to eat all holidays. Then when I get back to school, they'll all say, 'Who's that skinny, good-looking girl getting on the bus with two Tawhiti?'" "Not!" cried Tu, Tammy's twin brother. "They're going to say, 'Who's that skinny girl getting on the bus with Tu? She's ugly as sin.'" "I'll give you ugly," said Tammy, thumping him on the shoulder. "Ow!" Tu winced. I'm broke too," moaned Connor. Christmas could cost too much." "You're not wrong," I agreed. "It's going to be a boring end to the holidays with no money, no more movies, no takeaways." "No new clothes," added Vinny. He always had trendy new gear. "No Coke," Tu scowled. There was a thud from under the van. "What was that?" cried Vinny. "Possum," said Mrs. Tawhiti. Vinny stared out the back of the van. "You mean we just hit a dead possum?" "Well, it's dead now. Wasn't when we hit it," laughed Miss Tawhiti. Vinny stared around at everyone. "Well, aren't we going to stop to see if it's still alive?" "Nah, it's okay," said Mrs. Tawhiti. "I got it with the wheel." "All right, Mum. Good driving," said Tammy. "Awesome," agreed Tu. Vinny couldn't believe it. "But we just killed a poor, defenceless possum. That's like murder. It's horrible." "How about all the trees that possums kill every year?" said Connor. "And they carry TB, I added. Mum had told me that possums were responsible for the spread of tuberculosis into cattle and that it cost the country millions every year. Fortunately, our region was isolated and we were TB free." "They're pests," said Tammy. "The only good possums are dead possum." Everyone agreed except Vinny. Vinny and his mum are vegetarians. They're from the city, and poor Vinny never really comes to grips with life in the real world. He stared around at the rest of us, and though we'd just he stared around at the rest of us as though we'd just mowed down Bambi. "Insensitive peasants," he muttered. Tammy was looking ahead. "Possum!" she cried. Another furry animal sat on its hind legs in the middle of the road, staring into the lights. Mrs. Tawhiti didn't swerve or brake. It looked like we were going to go straight over the top of the possum without hitting it. Clunk! "Got it with a sump," yelled Tu. "Sweet!" "Nah, it's better when you get it with your wheel," said Tammy. "That way it gets pasted all over the road and it's soft and juicy for the hawks." "That's gross!" Vinny screwed up his face in disgust. "Why didn't we swerve or something?" "You want us to end up down the gully?" asked Mrs. Tawhiti. "Never swerve for a possum." "Unless you think you're going to miss it," said Tu under his breath. Connor was scratching his ginger hair and looking as though he wanted to say something. "What is it, Connor?" I asked encouragingly. My cousin catches live possums. He gets them processed and exports them to Asia." "You're joking," said Tu. Connor shook his head. "Nah, they're worth about $10 each." "Far out," I said. "You mean we've just run over $20 worth of possum?" Connor nodded. "He's cleaned out all the ones around his place. He's having trouble getting enough for his next order." "You guys," I cried, Why don't we trap some possums and sell them to Connor's cousin? There's tons of possums on our farm. You're onto it, Dav, said two. And the national park's just behind your place. That's full of possums. We could camp out at Isolation and set up cage traps. We'd get heaps, I said. What's isolation? Asked Vinny. It's when you're a long way from anywhere, teased Tammy. I laughed. It's a campsite on the river flats at the back of our place. It's cool. I'll ask my cousin if we can supply him for him, said Connor. Mrs. Tarfity glanced back. If he is keen, you guys can borrow our big canvas tent and camping stove. Excellent, said Tammy. We could stay up there, set up the traps, check them in the mornings, and go swimming and stuff for the rest of the day. And it'll keep you out of my hair for a while, muttered Mrs. Tarfity. Vinny hadn't said a word. What do you reckon? I asked him. He frowned. I don't know. You're talking about trapping wild animals in cages and sending them off to be slaughtered for food. I don't know if it's right. It's just like sheep, said two. We lock them in paddocks, then truck their lambs off to the works. It's the same thing, meat on legs. Yeah, agreed Vinny, but I'm vegetarian. Oh yeah, frowned two. But you're also a tree-hugging greenie, I said. Think of all the trees we'll be saving. Forget the trees, think of the money, cried Tammy. Think of the new clothes, the takeaways, the movies. Possums, called Mrs. Tarfity. There were two of them in the headlights. This time she slowed the van. Bet you fellas can't even catch these two. Bet you we can, yelled two. Mrs. Tarfity pulled to the side of the road and stopped the van. There was a rush for the side door. Two and Connor were first out the door and bolted straight for the possums. The animals had been dazzled, staring at the headlights, but when they heard the sound of running, they took off. One bolted for the scrub at the side of the road. Two tore after it, bending down to try and grab its tail. The other one dashed to the far side of the road and ran up a tree. The moon was bright, and we could see it scramble up the trunk and out onto a branch above the road. Two just about had the tip of his possum's tail as he raced into the bracken. He leapt after it, landing knee-deep in the wiry shrubs. There was a tearing sound. Ow! He stopped dead. The rest of us caught up to him. We could hear the possums scurry him away. What's the matter? Cried Tammy. It's full of blimmin' blackberry. She laughed. The old possum was a bit smarter than you were. Vinny, Connor and I grinned. Two scowled and started to slowly pull away the thorny branches. By the time he got out of the blackberry, his legs were crisscrossed with scratches and dribbles of blood. Connor was looking up at the treed possum. Get a long stick and we'll knock it down. Everyone scrambled around in the scrub. We soon found a straight stick and broke the twigs off it. Connor was the tallest, so he took it and lined up the thin branch the possum was hanging on. Give it a good, hard swing, said two. Mrs. Tarfity was watching from the van. There's an old wool pack in the van. See if you can knock it into that. Tammy fetched the wool pack and I helped her hold it open where we thought the possum would land. Try and knock it in, Con, Tammy challenged. Connor lined the branch up. He swung back and struck it hard with his stick. The branch shuddered violently. The possum hung on, digging its claws into the bark. Connor swung again. The branch dipped, but the possum did not let go. Go for the possum, not the branch, I suggested. You'll hurt it, squawked Vinny, stepping towards Connor. Connor swung his stick as hard as he could just beside the possum. The branch lurched down. The possum lost its grip and slipped from the branch, desperately hanging on with one claw. "Car's coming," yelled Mrs. Tafferty. "Get off the road." Tammy and I dragged the wool pack to the side of the road, and Connor scrambled over with his stick. We could hear a noisy engine racing towards us. Vinny stayed where he was. "The possum will fall and hurt itself." "Get off the road," yelled Mrs. Tafferty. Vinny gave the possum a desperate look and raced under the branch towards the side of the road. As he ran under the possum, it lost its grip and fell. Its timing was perfect. It landed on Vinny's head, scratching and clawing for a foothold. "Ah!" yelled Vinny, staggering towards us and swatting desperately at the possum. The lights swung around the corner, spotlighting him. The possum clawed Vinny in the air and he squawked again. He reached up and tore the possum off his head, hurling it back into the road. The vehicle didn't stop. Splat! A front wheel went over the possum, then a back wheel. Squish! The four-wheel drive rumbled around the corner and disappeared. Vinny walked over slowly and knelt beside the possum. It was only a centimetre thick in the middle, blood leaking out of its nose. "I killed it," said Vinny in a small voice, his head bent over the possum. Tammy nudged it with her toe. "Yep. It wasn't your fault," stuttered Connor. Two grabbed the possum's tail and pulled it off the road. It made a squelching sound. He swung it around and heaved it into the bushes on the side of the road. "Oh well, plenty more where that came from." Vinny gave him a dirty look.